Hey, folks. Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star. He's Mike Niziolek, Bloomington Herald Times. This is Mind Your Banners After Dark. Hooperazzi's watching Bonnie Raitt on Austin City Limit, something we should all be doing, frankly. Mike, what did you bring us tonight for After Dark? What adult beverage?
Apple juice.
It's not apple juice. Anyway, I got a pour of Blanton's. And in honor of the Peach Bowl, I have it in a glass that my sister gave me a couple Christmases ago that's etched with a map of Atlanta.
So, there you go.
There you go. I don't have one for Pasadena or Miami. I'm sorry. It was like or frankly, Phoenix or New York City, Charlotte. I don't have basically any bowl game covered other than the Peach Bowl. Like if they were in the Sun Bowl, I don't have El Paso. So, but they were in the Peach Bowl, and boy, were they in the Peach Bowl, Mike. Indiana 56, Oregon 22, and we can go, a few different directions with this, and we will. We're not going to talk about Miami tonight. There's going to be a lot of time to kind of get into that as we go, and frankly, just to be completely candid, neither one of us got much sleep last night. And we would, I think, both enjoy an earlier bedtime this evening. What struck me in real time, and then certainly watching bits and pieces of it back, a little bit last night, a little bit kind of in travel today, it looked just so remarkably casual. And I know that's helped by not just Oregon's turnovers, but the nature of Oregon's turnovers. One's a pick six and the other two give Indiana the ball inside the 10. Like they are all basically guaranteed touchdowns.
Well, and a blocked punt at the goal line.
Yeah, I counted the blocked punt as one of the turnovers. But it feels like we're past being amazed when Indiana does this, because it doesn't look amazing because they make it look routine. And to do it in a game where, we talk so much about what kind of adjustments would Oregon have for Indiana, the rematch element of all this. We said Oregon was better than it was when Indiana played, in Eugene in October. I mean, they just, they just waved Oregon away like a bug from a light. And from the beginning, with maybe a brief burst of sunshine through the clouds on that long Oregon touchdown drive to answer the pick six, like there was just no hope at all.
No daylight. But I think that's sort of what it was like. What's the winning blueprint for Oregon? It was like get an early lead and sort of bleed clock and do something to sort of get Indiana, keep away. And I mean, I guess Indiana's offense didn't get the ball until very late in the first quarter. But I mean, the opening play is a pick six. Obviously, they had kind of a problem with the running back and quarterback colliding, caused a fumble. And then obviously, that sort of just opens the floodgates to them being sort of in passing downs like we saw in Alabama in the Rose Bowl. And that's when sort of Indiana tees off. I think it was on PFF that I can pull it up now. I have it like literally right in front of me. They pressured more on 18 of his 44 dropbacks. Let me see how many sacks was it?
3 and 3 sacks.
3 sacks and 10 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
It resembled sort of that effort that we saw in the first game. And I guess these two teams were very different from the first matchup. That Oregon apparently got much worse and was a JV team, and Indiana obviously is now, one win away and obviously heavily favored to win the national title. I mean, the offense, to me, I know Mendoza, obviously, 5 touchdowns, 3 incompletions, another just incredibly efficient performance. But and we're going to try to write about this tomorrow. I think what struck me was how he's now, like, the advanced nature of that success was that he's pinpointing the exact strengths of his receivers and using that to break the opponent. Like Charlie Becker, every ball is a little bit high, right? Because he can go up vertically and get it. And he's got, anytime he's a one-on-one matchup outside, he's got the speed to sort of get it. He knows what to do. Elijah Surratt, the way he's placing the ball to just let him fight for it, kind of, just taking, and Chandler Whitmer called it, they talk a lot about knowing your personnel. And that's basically now what they're, Mendoza talks about, obviously his hospital school business background. I mean, he's in the doctorate level, right? It just feels like that now that they've advanced in this offense so much that this is what you're getting.
I think he'd be more like an MBA level. I think that's what you're striving for in business school, but keep going.
But whatever, high level degree. I didn't get any, so I don't know. But like, it's like,
I didn't go to college.
School. But that to me was the difference, right? Like, I mean, Oregon obviously was down some guys in the backfield and not as healthy at receiver, but I just felt like Indiana knew its personnel better, knew how to take advantage of what the defense was giving them. And Dan Lanning talked about that too. He's like, the way Mendoza was diagnosing the coverage and picking the exact right spot to throw the ball.
If you looked at the throw to Charlie Becker for the touchdown, like if you looked at like a replay of it, ESPN had a really good Skycam replay of it.
I did not see a Skycam replay
from like behind, from behind the formation, and right before the snap, they're in a too high safety look, and right before the snap, or maybe right at the snap, the I think it would have been the boundary safety rolls down. And that tells you that Charlie Becker is going to be in single coverage at the boundary against his corner. And, frankly, we've had 2 games of evidence here that suggests that Oregon's corners can't cover Indiana's receivers. Like that one-on-one, Oregon doesn't have the personnel to cover Indiana's receivers. And I think I turned to you and I said Charlie Becker on that snap, but the difference was that we were, 3 levels up, way behind the play, and I could see everything. Mendoza couldn't see everything.
I think you actually said, "Why isn't Ty Simpson in?"
But what Mendoza does, if you watch that replay, is, despite being field level, not having that right. Sort of eye in the sky, he immediately IDs Charlie Becker. And what he does, if you watch him, because the safety that stays high is the field safety, or whichever one, is Dylan Thieneman, basically. And Thieneman's on Mendoza's left side, and Mendoza looks to his left, and he keeps his eyes left long enough to let Becker beat his man. And he doesn't turn back to his right until the timing is it's like he's counting.
That's what I'm saying, because Whitmer was saying that he knows Becker's going to beat that one-on-one. He doesn't have to, right? And, like, that's amazing,
And I think one of the things that you are consistently hearing opposing coaches say about Mendoza now, I think we heard it a little bit with Ryan today. We definitely heard it more, and we definitely heard it with Dan Lanning, is the ball always goes where it's supposed to go. And that whether it's the recognition, pre-snap, post-snap, or both, he is spotting exactly where the ball is going to be thrown before. I mean, he had multiple, the touchdown to Omar Cooper, there was an outbreaking sideline route to Becker last night where the ball was out of his hands before the receiver was out of the break.
Oh, you're talking about the one that right at the sideline where it was kind of back.
And that is, that is, to your point, like a mastery of his role in this offense that we've seen at times, right?
Don't shortchange the receivers either. It's a combination.
Definitely.
The chemistry's there, and they're.
But I also think it's an avatar for what this team is doing. Yeah. Because like last night, for example, Oregon got some push at times at the line of scrimmage. Dante Moore threw for 285 yards, and I know it really didn't matter, and they were chasing and all that. But, like, it wasn't like Oregon just came in bumbling all over itself and unprepared. Indiana was just out executing them. Someone else did a really good sort of film review of the pick six with D'Angelo Pons, where Pons is outside playing in a certain coverage. I think Pons even kind of talked about, like, I was playing this coverage, but then I saw something, and what the person, it was some NFL film account, forgive me, I don't remember who it was, pointed out was that Pons recognized the split that the receiver's feet were in, and recognized that the split the receiver's feet should
play back too on the play. And so just stay
but
back.
He turns around and he makes he sees it, he turns around and he makes some motion to the defense. And the suggestion is basically Indiana is just a step ahead here, basically. And at this time of year, you see this sometimes, you have referenced 2019 LSU. That's what 2019 LSU felt like in its playoff run. By that point in the season, especially on offense, but even a little bit on defense, it always felt like the opponent was one step behind. It always felt like the opponent, like if the game was a chess match, it always felt like the opponent could tell that it was 2 moves behind, but couldn't do anything to break that rhythm. And that's where Indiana, it feels like, is right now.
I will say to your point about Moore, I mean, he had 117 pass yards in the fourth quarter. To me, it's 285, but that's an inflated number. I mean, congrats. But I mean, like that was sort of meaningless, a lot of meaningless production there because, I mean, the game was over. And Oregon didn't want to get embarrassed, I think, essentially, and take out its starters. Like I felt like just like they were forced to try to get to 22, I guess. I don't know what that did for them, but I mean, maybe it prevented Alberto from coming in. Honestly, I think that was really maybe what they didn't want to see, right? Like, I don't know, but so yeah, Moore, I mean, 24-39, obviously interception, fumble, sacked a bunch. But I mean, to shift to the defense, I mean, I think you got to start.
Can I drop some? I wrote something on Mendoza. I want to drop you some Mendoza numbers for these 2 playoff games, real quick. For these 2 playoff games, he's 31-36 for 369 yards with 8 touchdowns and no interceptions. Obviously, that's 3 more touchdowns than incompletions. His passer rating across these 2 games is 245.54. For comparison's sake, Mendoza now leads the country in passer rating. He was always kind of like neck and neck with Julian Sayin. He now leads the country in passer rating overall this season, 187.96. So that's how much better he is from a almost sort of like a statistical perspective in these last 2 games, even than he's been all year. And I ran these numbers too, and I don't. This is not me saying he should get credit for some kind of record season, because he shouldn't. But we've talked about why maybe the numbers don't pop for him and don't tell the story we expect them to when we see some of the performances. And we've talked about the clock rules and the way things have changed. I went back and I took his attempts numbers, and both his yards per attempts numbers and his touchdowns per attempts numbers, or like it's like 0.11 touchdowns per attempt, something like that. If you gave him Joe Burrow's attempts in 2019, Burrow had 5,671 yards, 60 touchdowns, 10.8 yards per attempt. This season, Mendoza, who still has 26 fewer pass attempts than Diego Pavia, despite playing 2 more games now, has averaged 9.5 yards per attempt, which would come out to just over 5,000 yards on Burrow's attempts number. And if he had the same number of attempts, and of course this is a very blunt instrument, but if he had the same number of attempts, he'd have 61 touchdowns. And I'm not saying that he's better than Joe Burrow. What I'm saying is he is being exactly as efficient as a national championship contending team.
Well, there's something to be said. Like, to me, if he was having that many attempts with this Indiana team, these games wouldn't be what they are, and the running game wouldn't be as good, and teams would be playing them differently. So I don't know that that's
all I'm trying to illustrate is that he is playing as efficiently as a team trying to win a national championship through its Heisman Trophy winning quarterback.
I think the flip side of that now, as we talk about the defense, like they had a short field like all night long. I mean, like they were put in advantageous situations time and time again by the defense. You talked about them calling out plays, and we've seen that, like, just so many instances of, like, in the locker room recently, and sort of players talking about it kind of throughout the year, but like, Aiden Fisher calling out the play and where it's going to go before the snap happens and things like that. But then I think, we talked about Pons, obviously, he gets the pick 6 to start the game out. And then sort of the defensive line takes over. Linebackers are really impressive. Daniel Ndukwe, I think the biggest question mark for like the couple weeks leading up to the first playoff game was, is this kid going to be able to handle this spot? I mean, he only had 100 and kind of defensive snaps combined in 2 years ish with the program. He has a career game, 2 sacks. Just one of them's a strip sack. And then obviously a blocked punt, which special teams kind of was his calling card as a freshman. Obviously he's from the Atlanta area and he makes the most of it. I thought what was really interesting with the snap numbers from PFF. Isaiah Jones played every snap. He played 69 snaps. And they played a
Rewinding
lot.
quickly to Daniel and Duque, there's been a lot of discussion of potential subterfuge on social media today. Do you think it is illegal that he got extra XP because this game was played in Atlanta?
I thought that was a great line. I was like,
because I didn't, I also get extra XP when I go to Atlanta.
So you get it when you eat a pub sub. There's a difference.
I didn't even eat one this trip. It probably explains the quality of my riding last night, frankly.
That's why you were so lethargic. You couldn't get out. I was like, so a gamer? And he's like, yes. But no, I thought that was interesting, that the idea that they played essentially 3 linebackers almost the entire game. And Caden Turner even got snaps. I mean, they were linebacker heavy, and a lot of that had to do with Oregon's sort of multiple running back, multiple tight end kind of personnel.
Oregon was like trying to be intentional about getting the run game going, and they felt like they had to do it some way other than just through.
But maybe that played into like maybe Indiana is like that, because Haynes talked about kind of leading up that the idea that now he's not afraid to run 4-3 against anything. Like this was sort of like his sort of where he would go with the 4-3, but like now that they perfected it, like it's not easy to break those looks that they give. I mean, I just with the high level that Jones, Hardy, and Fisher are playing together. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
It feels like I don't know if this is the right way to say it. I think last season and to a certain amount early this season, it felt like a lot of the discussion centered with the defense on the defensive line and those edge rushers. And, certainly last season, the sort of combinations that Kamara, Carpenter, and CJ West could build. And, this year early with the sort of emergence of Kellen Wyatt and Mario Landino and Mario.
You said John Wyatt? Kellen Wyatt.
Yeah, Kellen Wyatt.
Oh, you said John Wyatt, I think.
I did not say John Wyatt.
John Wayne?
But I think I did say Mario Landino.
Okay.
And obviously Kamara being part of that rotation as an All-American last year, we knew Indiana had good backers. But I think what we've seen in the last maybe 2 months now, I guess, because obviously, the season is kind of, 2 months ago was like before the Wisconsin game, is the heart of this defense sort of shifting from that line to those linebackers, because the linebackers, as good as the line is, and listen, the line is obviously taking some hits. People are asking in the comments about Kamara. There was nothing, at least that I heard from anyone, definitive last night. I do believe he was in the locker room post game. I think I saw him.
He was on the field. Like he was moving.
Yeah, it wasn't like Stephen Daly where like he's carted off or no one had him in a boot or anything. But there was kind of nothing definitive, coming out of last night. And I'll put it up here if you want it, because I know you're a Joe Burrow guy because you cover him in Cincinnati.
The good weather, in good weather, yes.
But the what makes this defense, I think now, and I think you've talked about it a lot. I think we've sort of examined it in different ways, and I think the Ohio State game was maybe this like the magnum opus for this idea that the flexibility that those three give you, and then even the trust of a Caden Turner or a Jeff Utzinger in spot situations, but certainly those three at the top, Hardy, Fisher, and Jones, they make it really hard to effectively put Indiana's defense in bad situations, because they will always be heavy against the run.
Well, if you look down, because you did this a couple times, you look up, it's like, oh, there's 5 defensive linemen. Oh, there's 5 defensive back. It's like it just would change. I mean, it just changes constantly, and it's hard. I mean, like Dante Moore did not really. Well,
it's just if you have to scheme an offense where you say we need to run the football, and I looked this up a second ago, and then I got away from it. But if you need to scheme an offense where you say we need to run the football against, I think it's fair to say at this point, basically the best run defense in the country. Indiana, since that Old Dominion game, which is obviously colored by those 2 really long runs, Indiana's yards per carry, single game yards per carry average, since is
allowed, you mean?
Yes, in single game, 2.8, 1.3, 0.1, 2, basically 3, 2.7, 3.1, 3.5, 2.2, 3.6, 2.3, 1.6, 2.2, 1.6, 3.6. Like you need to run the football to be balanced so that your quarterback's not getting killed by their rush. But you can't do that because Indiana's always got 3 linebackers on the field. And so there's never a soft spot in the defense. The whole point of Tampa 2 coverage when you spread the field with 3 receivers is that you're forcing the defense to either bring a safety into the box and go +1 there, but you get a mismatch somewhere in the pass game or a one-on-one somewhere in the pass game, or you force the defense to take a backer off the field and put a nickel on the field. And now you've got one less big player, one less heavy player to run the ball against. And with 2 safeties up high, you can, it's basically 6 on 6 in the box and you can run the ball. But you can't do that with Indiana when Indiana's running with 3 linebackers. And I thought there was something else interesting I was listening to, and I'm never good about remembering where I hear things. So I want to be very intentional about crediting who this was. It was Chip Patterson over at the Cover 3 podcast. I was listening to their kind of recap of both of these semifinals at one point today during a layover. And he said he wondered how much it helps, and you kind of referenced this a little bit earlier, that Indiana can adapt to personnel, but also that a lot of these guys just play all game, that Indiana doesn't have a bunch of really exotic sub packages. Indiana's not running 6 guys on and off the field.
I mean, the only thing they've done recently is on the offense with the extra offensive linemen. Defensively, they're comfortable with everything, but they don't have this crazy stuff that they go to. It's more basic.
The guys that are on there know what they're doing, basically. Yeah. That you're not just constantly flipping, because if you do that, it's great in theory, but it goes back to this conversation we have with this team and with the staff, and the staff's ability to understand how to give its players exactly as much as they can handle and not more, and putting them in positions to succeed based on what you're asking them to do. It just, Indiana's not the more you do that, the more you run 5 guys on and 5 guys off, the more capacity you have for introducing chaos, for introducing uncertainty and confusion. And this defense in particular, which doesn't rotate a ton, barely rotates in the secondary, barely rotates at linebacker, rotates some at defensive line. But that's
to your point, in the Oregon game,
they always look like they know what they're doing.
Good spot to mention Super Mario and Tyreek Tucker, 55 and 51 snaps. I mean, for defensive tackles, and they were producing the same at the beginning of the game as they were at the end of the game. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Tucker, what was his? Tucker had 4 quarterback pressures. Landino obviously had, I think, did he have both fumble recoveries? And
yes, he did. Yeah.
3 tackles, all stops, so stops for negative or no gain. And they that's been sort of pretty consistent. And I mean, I did a big piece on Tucker and how far he's, his story and how far he's come. And part of his kind of thing was getting ready for that workload. And because James Carpenter was sort of the guy, and Tucker sort of taking over that. Carpenter didn't come off the field. And that's rare for a defensive, a nose like that, and to be those type of to maintain that level of production, especially at the power 4 level versus lower level, where the guys you're going against are going to wear you down. And to your point, I mean, they played the majority of the snaps. And I think Pro Football Focus had at 69 plays. So they were playing both over 50. And just a really impressive standard they set. And I think that's been sort of the story all year. You talk about the linebackers, and then I think the next thing is, whereas Kamara has kind of been off and on, and sometimes more off than on, and obviously you've had the injuries on the other side, the defensive tackles have been more productive than they were last year when they had CJ West, who went in the draft, and Carpenter, who was 6 years, had been in this defense forever. And these guys have taken over and I think been more productive and effective. And that's not a slight of last year, because I thought I thought CJ West was the best player on the team in the second half of the season. And that I just think shows you how good that interior, and when your interior is good, it just makes life hard. Daniel Ndukwe talked about, he's like, look, I knew Landino on the strip sack was getting upfield, and my job was easy. I just had to make sure Moore didn't get out contain, and I had him on the inside, and he got him. And so, like,
and if you think about it, like tactically, if you're owning that like there's no offense that can live in a world where defensive tackles are getting penetration. Like there's literally not an offense.
It's over before it started.
Where,
you can't go, you can't get out of the pocket,
right.
you can't
and
run.
If you're having to, and that if you're having to send your pass protection, your running back or your H back or whoever into the middle of the line because you know that those tackles are getting through again and again, then you're giving speed rushers like in Dukeway. Kamara, there was a clip that went around today of him just, quite literally sitting down Oregon's left tackle.
Not as egregious of an Oregon performance as that EJ Williams rep.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, here's the thing: there are like maybe a half dozen moments in that game, where you see some like an Indian, and you just, for all this talk about Indiana, what is it, the scheme or the way they develop players or whatever, like they are just sharper and quicker and better prepared than their opponents. And you also feel a little bit compelled, and it's not our job to like defend these guys or whatever, but you do feel compelled to sort of push back against this narrative that Indiana just did all this in the portal. Because in Dukeway,
I've seen a couple comments. They just paid.
And it was just Tucker and Kamara were all players that were recruited, signed, and developed by the staff. And I understand 2 of them came over from James Madison, but you don't get to take away the credit for what they did to develop those players at James.
Because they developed all the guys from James Madison. They recruited them. They scouted them.
Aiden Fisher, Elijah Hardy, Isaiah Jones. Like Isaiah Jones is the only one that really this staff doesn't have fingerprints on from day one of his college career.
On defense, you mean? Well,
in that front seven, seven specifically. And that's not to say that Indiana doesn't have some, important portal additions. Lewis Moore was really important. Yes, first of all, yes, absolutely. The ability to bring the guys over from JMU was very important. Fine. That is also just something that everyone's trying to do. Like, look at what's happening with Penn State right now. Look at what's happening at UCLA right now. Look at the way that, Oklahoma was one of the greatest examples this year of the team basically just trying to, Utah as well, just transplant an offense with a coordinator and a quarterback this year.
They did not bring everybody with them. Like Dukeway was one of, I think, 3 commits that they had.
Four, I think it was 4. But it was Mendoza, Landino, Jaja Boyd, and in Dukeway, and there might have been one more. I'm not thinking about, but that's, yeah.
And so, but I mean, you talk about that, and then you talk about the guys that they left. Obviously, quarterback was one of them. Like, they didn't just say like, well, we need all of them. They said we want they were picky and choosy because they thought that, they got the best of the guys that they developed and brought them over, and it wasn't just like a full rebuild. I mean, because like they also made anybody that stayed in Indiana. You talked about Isaiah Jones, you talked about Carter Smith, Mari Farrell, has developed under this staff.
Murray Sharp, Charlie Becker. Omar Cooper and guys like that were already on that trajectory. Fine. Omar Cooper was already on that trajectory, but you don't get to give someone else credit for what happened after they left either.
Right.
And this idea that, I think the way I said it on Twitter, and I wasn't trying to start a fight with any one person in particular, but the way I said it on Twitter was Indiana got old the same way everyone else does. Like there were some transfers, Trey Wettig last season, Pat Coogan this season, the tight ends, keeping a hold of a guy like EJ Williams that you get out of the portal. And did you see what EJ Williams tweeted? He said, like, I didn't know it was a crime to have a COVID year, basically. But like there are so many of these guys that were either already here or were already with the staff and then just picked up and transplanted from there to here. And like, this idea that Indiana is doing something that is sort of somehow cheapening the process, I think is what probably Curt Cignetti would bristle at. It's not the idea of like, I don't think Curt Cignetti's going to care if you criticize him for picking this player over that player.
Well, he said, I think it was late in the season where somebody asked him kind of about his success. He's like, look, this wouldn't have been possible 5-6 years ago, but before the portal and before everything sort of opened up. Like, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. And I don't think he has any problem admitting that, like, they've taken advantage of the current rules, set to flip it around quicker because that you just could able to flip the personnel quicker. And so, like, I don't think he has a problem saying that, but I think the key point that you made and that he would make is that the development piece is still the most important part of it. And I mean, obviously scouting and sort of identifying talent, but you have to develop it. And that's what this staff has sort of been known for. I mean, like since they were at Elon, essentially altogether.
The last thing I think we should talk about, and then we can do in the other business. Again, we will obviously reconvene on Miami, again later this week. Is the crowd? Someone asked a little while ago, how did it compare to SEC crowds or SEC fan bases at the Peach Bowl? And I mean, I'm not going to act like I've watched every Peach Bowl that included an SEC team since they made it a playoff game. I watched plenty that included SEC teams when it wasn't, and it was like a lot of bowl games where the Georgia Dome was like 3/4 full, and it was fine. But anytime, that was Alabama versus X or Georgia versus X, that's what it sounded like. That it was a home game on steroids because it was in a dome. And
but
so
I covered
the sound was cracked, and the sound was just not and now if it had been Indiana, Alabama, it probably wouldn't have been what it was. But like Georgia, Oregon a few years ago, at least as my memory serves me, it's been a while. And it was a similar game. I think Oregon lost like 49-3. It was that kind of like that is what Indiana affected. And I met a couple friends, when I was in town, just like old friends, high school friends, people I grew up with, and including a friend of mine who's a big Georgia fan. And we were walking around Centennial Olympic Park the afternoon of the game. And he was just like, yeah, this is what it feels like when Georgia's in town for the SEC championship. There's just a fan base that completely overruns the city. And then it overran the state.
I mean, I covered multiple SEC championships with Alabama. I covered a Peach Bowl with Auburn, obviously, which is a very short drive away from the building. And it's nothing like that. And I think part of it goes to the idea that those games are missable for programs that were used to being at that level. And so, Georgia, yes. I mean, the majority of the crowd in those moments are, with those local, teams, the ties, but that's not 90, 95. And it's not the fervent life or death moment it felt like that these fans sort of just wanted. And I think that made the key difference. I mean, you talked about kind of the crowd noise, and I posted kind of some of the reaction to the pick six and how loud it was in that moment. Like, I covered like a half dozen games in that building and never heard anything like that. And, obviously maybe it's a small sample size, but I think it's because of that when you talk about those programs that have those deep ties, but also more traditional success, they say like, well, we'll wait for the bowl game, or well, we'll wait for the championship game, or well, we went last year, we went 2 years ago. Whereas like Indiana has said, rightfully so, like most of the fans have never seen anything like this. And so it means that your favorite phrase, it means a little bit more. And so I think that's the difference. Cause I think it's conservative to say 90-10. Like I don't know that it was 90-10, to be honest.
I would say it was more than 90%. Yeah.
And so like,
because the Oregon clusters
was the band and the
largely in the lower bowl,
their ticket section, which is very small.
The second and third decks were basically just all red, like almost completely red. So
like it just, that's not what Georgia does when they, I mean, even though it's like, yeah, probably 80-20 or 75-25. I mean, it just was beyond that. I mean, it was a home game. I mean, and as the Rose Bowl was a home game as well. And that was even farther out, which is, I don't know which one's more impressive. They both are, but
you know what I think the most impressive thing might be? I think they might outnumber Miami fans.
That'll be but is it more like the Super Bowl though, where there's some just non-fans that have tickets?
Yeah, maybe.
And like that sort of neutralizes it. I don't know a lot about like the crowd spread in national, because I mean the Super Bowl is always like, well, criticism is you don't get fans, you get just business executives that have tickets. And so is there that? I think Indiana will push and there will be a good contingent. The prices are going to be an issue because like I think obviously the demand for the local team, but then you have the demand from the team that's traveling really well. I mean, it's going to be kind of crazy in terms of prices, I think. And so,
yeah, I just think Indiana fans have embrace the idea that this is, there's a phrase that's often used in European football, which is on the march. Like when you
get available is my point. There might be an impediment to that. I don't disagree that they will make it happen.
When you get to like a big cup final or something, like you'll get stories of people that like take out a credit card purely to just pay for.
Oh, I'm sure there will be, but like I said, I just don't know what the inventory will be.
Not that
to make that happen.
I am not recommending anyone do that.
Zach is giving financial advice. Mind your interest rates.
Really, please do mind your interest rates. Like that is the only financial advice I will give. Please mind your interest rates.
Take out of your 401k. Go to the Miami.
Take out of Mike's 401k. Go to Miami.
You wouldn't get much. You might make it to Louisville.
Any other business?
How you doing?
I'm tired. We said we'd do like 25 minutes and it's 35, which is fine. There's a lot to talk about and it's a lot of fun. And I should say, like, I'm sorry that we didn't do this last night. Like, we didn't sit down until I think after 12:30, and we figured, number one, a lot of folks would have kind of moved on with their night. I know there were a lot that were still up, but I think a lot of them were up and in crowded establishments singing ABBA pretty loudly. I like the again, forgive me, I'm never good about cataloging where I see these things, but some IU fan tweet that crossed my timeline that said, "You can tell how my life is going right now because at 2:00 this morning, I was singing ABBA's Fernando arm in arm with Jared Jeffries, and it was like the fifth coolest thing that had happened to me that day." But we also just had a ton of ground to cover. We didn't, and this is not like this is world's smallest violin stuff. We didn't even get on the last media shuttle until I think 2:30. So we wanted to wait until tonight, but we wanted to get
the last ones out. I think we were
the last ones out because the bowl people left.
Oh, left. Yeah. So yeah, they would have left. I think we were there just on their own.
We closed down the club. It was just the saddest of all the clubs in downtown Atlanta on Friday night into Saturday morning. Any other business?
I don't know. Any other comments, questions? We were there. So
people are asking about portal visitors. I mean, there will be a few. I think CJ Baxter is expected through this weekend. I think the Wisconsin lineman was reported to be expected through. It's not going to be probably quite as hurly-burly as it was last weekend. They filled some of these needs.
Expect the 48-hour rule to be back in effect and Monday to be past it.
Well, it's also next week's the coaches convention, and there's a dead period. So you can't. There's always a dead period around the coaches convention because they don't want to ask coaches to have to be on their campuses instead of at the convention. So I mean, the point is these visits will happen they'll happen fast because Signetti wants them to. They'll happen fast also because there's kind of a tight window.
We should note now the extension kicks in for IU players. I mean, if they wanted to enter the portal, they'll have 5 extra days. And for the draft guys, they will have 5 extra days as well. And so it'll be interesting because there will be a short turnaround for any IU players that get. I mean, there's a handful that did get invited to, like the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl. If Mendoza were to leave, he will have a short turnaround. A couple days, 10 days, I think, in between 10 days, in between those events. So it'll be interesting to watch, but I mean, now those decisions, we know what the window will be for them. And every one of those guys that are kind of thinking about their future will have a little extra time here because they made the national title game.
Who's your Viking mention? We did not mention, I think there were 3 different 4-star recruits, or at least 2 of them were 4 stars, depending on where you look. But they did pick up 3 commitments at the Navy All-American game, what used to be the Army All-American game. Montana Torbert, who's an athlete out of Cincinnati Taft, Jahide Brown, who's a receiver out of the Christian Academy of Louisville, and Garyon Hobbs, who I think is a back-end defensive back safety, also out of Christian Academy of Louisville. So, a good day in that regard.
Yeah, somebody talked about the tickets, 3,000. I think the low on StubHub, I'm looking. It looks like the lowest is 3,600. So that might be cost prohibitive for some fans. I mean, that's an insane amount of money.
Mike, just draw down on Mike's 401k, and I don't promote thievery.
And that stadium is not worth. That stadium is not worth going for $4,000 a ticket.
It'll be sold out, though. I mean, it will.
Yeah, no, but
when I say I think there will be more IU fans there, I just the cost is going to be prohibitive, and if there aren't, the cost will be why, and that's not like some like excuse in advance. Like if there aren't, then the cost will be why, because Miami fans will just bought the tickets months ago because it's at home, and they're like, well, we'll just go, or maybe we'll resell them or whatever. I just, I've seen the way this fan base travels. Like, this is, I guess the point I was trying to make earlier is not necessarily to compare directly, like what did it feel like at the 2017 Peach Bowl or at the 2019 Peach Bowl, but more to say that, this is what when you hear SEC fans brag about how well they travel and how they fill up stadiums and the atmospheres they create in games like this specifically, this is what it feels like. When a fan base rallies around the idea that like we're all going and we're all going together, and you will see us and you will feel us, and somebody called Indiana fans like the nicest army ever to invade the South or something like that. I just wouldn't be shocked if at very least it feels 50-50, despite the fact that it's quite literally Miami's home stadium. So we'll have a lot more to build up to that game. For now, I think Mike and I are probably, especially because I'm looking at the score of the Bears-Packers game, and I'm not sure Mike is staying up for the fourth quarter, but we'll see.
Work to do. Got work to do.
Yeah, it's just got a hill to climb. But thank you all for joining us on Mind Your Banners After Dark. Haven't done one of these in a while, but it's always kind of fun to maybe let what hair Mike and I have remaining down. There's increasingly it's shifting down to our jaw lines and away from our scalps. And you know what? Frankly, stories like this are fun, but if you want to know where the hair goes, 2:30 a.m. media shuttles is probably one of the answers to that question. So, Mike, you good? You gonna get some rest?
Maybe tomorrow.
Get some rest.
Tomorrow.
He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. We'll be back this week, obviously, to look at the Miami game. We'll probably do a podcast, I would guess, at some point this week, and then another one from Miami. I think we're both getting down there Friday, right? So
16th, I think. I don't know the day of the week that is.
You might just like leave one day and just sort of amble down there, stop at Rock City in Chattanooga, check out a large truck stop somewhere.
We could go play craps at the Hard Rock Casino.
We could. I mean, we won't, but we could.
We could.
Speaking of bad financial advice, this has been Mind Your Banners. Mind your interest rates. Don't mind Mike's 401k, and please, please, please gamble responsibly. I'm Zach Osterman. Thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you soon.